The Chevrolet 307 small block engine has long been misunderstood and unfairly criticized. Many enthusiasts dismissed it as weak or uninspiring, yet that judgment overlooked the role it was designed to play. At a time when muscle car fans demanded ever higher horsepower, the 307 quietly provided something far more valuable: reliability, efficiency, and everyday usability. While magazines ridiculed it, hot rodders ignored it, and history books forgot it, the 307 proved that practicality could be every bit as impressive as raw speed. In reality, this engine was never a failure. It was a forward-thinking solution for the automotive challenges of its era. By the late 1960s, the American car industry was changing rapidly. Federal emission standards were tightening, insurance companies were penalizing high-horsepower models, and the oil crisis loomed on the horizon. General Motors knew the golden age of unrestrained muscle car performance was nearing its end. What the market increasingly needed was not a quarter-mile champion, but an engine built to survive the daily grind of commuting, family trips, and long-term ownership. The 307 small block, introduced in 1968, was born from this reality. Unlike the high-compression V8s of the earlier muscle era, the 307 was engineered with durability and drivability as its top priorities. Its displacement was carefully chosen to balance sufficient power with improved fuel economy, while its conservative compression ratio meant it could run smoothly on regular gasoline without the knocking issues that plagued more aggressive engines. Internally, its design focused on longevity. Sturdy connecting rods, generously sized main bearings, and a crankshaft meant for years of reliable service. The camshaft emphasized smooth idle and broad torque rather than chasing high-rev horsepower figures. All of this made the 307 well-suited for the emissions equipment of the time, which was becoming mandatory across the industry. Although automotive magazines of the era criticized the 307 for lacking muscle, its real-world performance told a different story. Producing between 140 and 200 horsepower, depending on the model year and application, it wasn't a drag strip monster, but it offered steady torque where everyday drivers actually needed it, in city traffic, on suburban roads, and at highway speeds. For families and fleet buyers, this translated into a car that felt dependable and responsive without being temperamental. Even more importantly, it could deliver fuel economy in the mid-teens, with some owners reporting 18 to 20 miles per gallon on the highway, numbers that were very respectable for a V8 at the time. The 307's reputation as underpowered came from being compared to high-performance engines it was never meant to compete with. In truth, it wasn't designed for drag strips or magazine covers. It was designed for the average American driver who wanted an affordable, long-lasting, and easy-to-maintain V8. In that mission, the 307 succeeded brilliantly. Far from being a failure, it was a practical workhorse that reflected the realities of its era, an engine that kept American families moving when the rules of the automotive world were changing.
What set the Chevrolet 307 apart was its smoothness and refinement, qualities that even surprised some of its harshest critics. Unlike high-compression performance engines that idled roughly and delivered their power in a narrow RPM range, the 307 was designed to operate in a civilized and predictable manner. It started reliably in cold weather, warmed up quickly, and maintained consistent drivability under all conditions. Instead of chasing magazine-friendly horsepower numbers, it provided an ownership experience defined by ease of use and trustworthiness. For everyday drivers, this balance of adequate performance and strong dependability was far more valuable than the temperamental character of many so-called muscle engines. Yet, despite these strengths, the 307 was unfairly ridiculed in its own era. Automotive journalists of the late 1960s and 1970s evaluated cars almost exclusively on acceleration times and quarter-mile results. Engines were judged by how quickly they could push a car down a drag strip, while practical virtues like fuel economy, low maintenance costs, and long-term durability were rarely given serious attention. This created an unfair playing field. The 307 was constantly compared to performance-oriented V8s rather than to other engines intended for family sedans or fleet duty. It was like criticizing a daily driver sedan for not being a race car. General Motors didn't help its case either. Marketing never properly positioned the 307 as a smart, dependable choice. Instead, GM often downplayed it, allowing car magazines and enthusiasts to shape its reputation as a weak, uninspired option. In reality, professionals who prioritized cost per mile rather than horsepower per dollar recognized the 307's true value. Fleet operators discovered that it delivered exactly what they needed: reliable service, moderate fuel consumption, and lower long-term costs. Police departments became unlikely supporters, finding that while high-speed pursuit cars required stronger engines, the vast majority of patrol duty demanded reliability and endurance. Reports of police cruisers with 307s passing 150,000 miles with only basic servicing were common. Taxi operators pushed the engine even harder, running them nearly non-stop in stop-and-go traffic. Many of these cabs logged 250,000 to 300,000 miles on original 307s, proving their worth in the toughest real-world conditions. For suburban families, the 307's virtues were just as clear. It was an engine that started every morning, handled commuting and errands with ease, and required little more than oil changes and routine maintenance. Owners discovered that the total cost of ownership was significantly lower than with more powerful V8s, which often needed premium fuel, frequent tune-ups, or early rebuilds. While enthusiasts mocked the 307 as boring, the people who lived with it every day often came to see it as brilliant. Time has since vindicated the 307. While many high-performance engines of the same era required costly rebuilds after years of hard use, surviving 307s often continued running reliably with only basic upkeep. Collectors today are beginning to appreciate them for what they truly represent: engines built for the real world, not for magazine covers. Because so many 307-powered cars lived relatively gentle lives compared to muscle cars, they often survive in more original condition, making restoration projects easier and more affordable. Parts availability also remains excellent thanks to the huge production numbers, another benefit of what was once seen as a drawback. The legacy of the Chevrolet 307 is not of drag-stripped glory, but of faithful service. It taught General Motors that engines designed for actual customer needs could provide just as much value, if not more, than those built purely for performance bragging rights. In many ways, the 307 anticipated the balance modern engines strive for: efficiency, reliability, and just enough power to keep up with everyday demands. With technologies like fuel injection, variable valve timing, and turbocharging, today's power plants now achieve what the 307 hinted at decades earlier: a harmony between practicality and performance. Far from being a failure, the 307 has proved itself as one of the most misunderstood engines in American history. It was never meant to be a hero on the drag strip. Its heroism was measured in years of dependable service to families, fleets, and workers who relied on their cars every single day. In hindsight, the critics were wrong. Sometimes the quiet, boring option turns out to be the most brilliant.